Vikram, it is indeed an honor and a pleasure to have you on this panel. And this session has been much awaited for all of us. Just a brief introduction about Vikram. He is an award-winning NLP coach, a leading coach in Asia, and the founder of the NLP Academy. Nalini is going to moderate the session and also give you a very elaborate introduction about the speaker. Before that, I would just like to give a brief introduction about Nalini. Nalini Srinivas is a council member with Wicci TN Entrepreneurship Council, and she is an edupreneur and a franchise of the Little Millennium Preschool. And not only that, she's a very passionate psychologist herself. So I think she's a very apt person to take this dialogue further. Nalini, over to you.
Thank you so much, Raji. That was a good introduction. Good evening, everyone. Sorry. Good evening, everyone. I take this privilege and opportunity to moderate this session on behalf of Wicci Tamil Nadu Entrepreneurship Council. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Rajashri Krishnaswamy, President, Ms. Abhirami Vivek, Vice President of Wicci Tamil Nadu Entrepreneurship Council, for giving me such a wonderful opportunity to be a part of Wicci TN Entrepreneurship as a council member. It's my pleasure to moderate this Wicci Talks Knowledge Share series. Today, I'm so happy and super excited to moderate a fantastic person, a great mind-blowing speaker, Mr. Vikram Dhar. Thank you, Mr. Vikram Dhar, for accepting our invitation from Wicci. When we discussed in our council to give some talk with relevant to the prevailing situation, we approached and requested Mr. Vikram Dhar to do one. He gave us a great topic, self-coaching for success. As most of us will need this in this present situation. Dear all, I promise this evening session is going to be a great one. It's going to be a Q&A session. The viewers, if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat box. Your questions will be answered at the end of the session. Also, if you have any specific or personal questions, you can always write a mail to the speaker for answers. His mail ID will be posted by the host at the end of the session. Before I welcome Mr. Vikram Dhar, I would like to give a brief introduction about him. Vikram Dhar is an international leadership facilitator and coach. He has attended courses and seminars with the best coaches in the world. Vikram is personally trained, certified, and mentored by John Maton. John is the former coach of the late superstar of business world, Steve Jobs. He had the privilege to learn from global gurus, David Allen, the productivity guru, Jack Canfield, success coach, Brian Tracy, greatest sales coach, and Eckhart Tolle, power of now fame. He is a licensed neuro-linguistic programming coach directly certified by Dr. Richard Bondler, who is a co-founder of NLP. Vikram is a licensed neurosemantics trainer certified by Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Vikram is a licensed neurosemantics trainer certified by Dr. Michael Hall. Vikram has attended international coach certification with John Grinder, co-founder of NLP. He is a certified NLP trainer accredited by American Board of NLP US and by International Association of Professional Coaches, Counselors, and Trainers. Vikram's global workspace is a sort of after award-winning leadership coach and trainer in Asia. He has trained participants from 40 plus countries in NLP and coaching. Vikram mentors 300 plus global coaches and NLP trainers in India, the US, UK, Dubai, Kuwait, Myanmar, Canada, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Australia, and so on, and has been instrumental in helping them expand their business and grow consistently year on year. Vikram Dhar is also an author of a book, The Ultimate Coaching Guide. This book speaks about a comprehensive guide to effective coaching, leadership, executive life, and performance for novice and seasoned coaches. It includes the latest coaching models and tools based on emotional intelligence, neuroscience, and coaching in the post-pandemic times with a special emphasis on business of coaching and coaching case studies. So now, let me welcome the hero of the session for this evening, Mr. Vikram Dhar. Welcome, Mr. Vikram.
Thank you, Nalini, and thank you, Dr. Rajshri. It's a pleasure to be here. And what a long introduction.
My pleasure. So now, so before, I just gave you an introduction about yourself for the audience. So I would like to hear from you, like what made you change your career from a corporate sector to coaching and NLP business?
I was working in IBM when I stumbled across neuro-linguistic programming, and that probably can be said that was the start of my coaching journey, even though that was technically not when I literally started. I was a decade ago, I was wondering, how I can improve my performance at workplace, and as part of that search, I was searching about something which can help, and neuro-linguistic programming came on top of the search, and I attended a course, and I was fascinated by what it could offer. And later on, I was fascinated by coaching as well and how NLP can fit into coaching. And so over a period of time, I kept on learning, kept on coaching. I was part of the IBM Global Coaches group as well. I used to coach people in IBM Global, and weekends and in the evenings, I used to coach people and train in NLP, and doing that for almost 6-7 years while I was still at work. And then eventually I took a transition of becoming an entrepreneur. Even though, it sounds very flashy to become an entrepreneur. It always sounds very flashy to, own a business, but it always comes with a risk of its own. So my view would be to, plan an entrepreneurship journey rather than, hearing from different marketers, which generally is a trend these days on social media and digital platforms, that, just become a coach and you can become a millionaire, which is not true. You need to plan everything. You need to plan your coaching and entrepreneurship journey to become successful. All top entrepreneurs have spent enough time testing their services, testing their products, and then only they have been successful. Nobody knows about the journey of being successful. Everybody only sees the end, which is, okay, when somebody has become successful. So the most important element of being an entrepreneur is to plan for it.
Okay. So we just got a gist of your background and the journey of your entrepreneurship as well as your coaching business. You are always positive and motivated. What keeps you going?
What keeps me going? Well, a deep desire to get better every single day with respect to my work. And considering my work is coaching and neuro linguistic programming, I just ensure that I just spend enough time on the content, and that just helps me stay positive because the entire content is about positivity. So I'm kind of lucky to just read about how to become positive, which just helps to be positive.
Okay, that's great. So, what attracts you towards entrepreneurship instead of a corporate career?
Well, you can say that I am an accidental entrepreneur. I probably must be the only entrepreneur in my family. And most of my family and extended family members are doctors, engineers, teachers, bankers. And even I'm an engineer. So I started off as an engineer. And eventually I found myself that my core value of freedom to design a life for myself and design a life to own it and live it on my own terms probably shifted my focus probably around 9 to 10 years back in terms of taking a leap towards an entrepreneurship rather than a corporate career, even though I was having a very successful information security career as part of Ernst& Young and IBM Security Services.
Okay, sounds great. You are the founder of NLP Coaching Academy. Such a unique name. Our audience wants to know what kind of problem are you solving with the help of your startup?
Uh, Such a unique name. Well, it's a very simple name, considering my nature of my business is teaching NLP and doing coach training. So it was an easy pick in terms of finding a name which fits the niche. So NLP Coaching Academy was the ideal choice. And the domain name of my website as well, it's nlpcoach.in. Very simple. People can remember it very easily. And that's part of the branding strategy as well. And I will say I had no idea about branding when I picked up the domain and just kept the name. And eventually I learned branding over a period of time. And I had to thank myself that, my gut feeling picked up the ideal brand name, picked up the ideal domain. And so that's the story behind the name of NLP Coaching Academy. And what problems do I solve? Well, first of all, it's the essence of being a coach starts with self-awareness and how to use it on yourself, and uh, that keeps one going in different areas in his or her life as well. And if you have to look at the extension of NLP Coaching Academy as a brand and what does it represent, what does it do, I won't say it's kind of a problem. I will say that it helps people who want to become a coach become coaches. So it's a market need that we cater to. There are people who are looking to become coaches, and as part of NLP Coaching Academy, as the founder, I ensure that people have access to good quality education.
Okay, so I think that made you unique in your teaching as well as your academy name. All these stuff made you as a unique person as well on the whole.
Well, you can say that.
Yeah. So what are the key ingredients of your startup?
Well, mine is not a startup because I started almost 9, 10 years ago. I can probably tweak the question by saying, how can a startup thrive? And considering, the amount of digital space that we live in, we live in a digital era. And when I started, the digital era had just not boomed yet. The boom of digital era happened probably 3, 4 years back. And what's the ingredient of a startup? I'll say the main core of the startup is constant innovation and marketing and a desire to stay relevant, whether it is a product, whether it is a service. So if you're looking at, thriving startups, they ensure that their service and product is relevant with respect to the time. And if you would have probably looked at, large organizations, and I'm talking about billion-dollar industries, they got wiped out pretty, you know, in weeks or months because they didn't keep up with the times in terms of the relevance in innovation. So from an entrepreneurship perspective, whether it is a simple product or it is a service or a complicated product, constant innovation is the key.
Okay, that sounds brilliant. So during this COVID-19 crisis, what are the measures you have undertaken to continue your business without disruption?
Mm, during COVID, well, yes, COVID was tough for many people. Luckily, as a coach, since the nature of business deals with help people deal with their own uncertainties. And when the business dynamics shifted due to the lockdown and what was going on generally at the workplace, it I think as founder of NLP Coaching Academy, for myself and for my team, it was important to think through how we can still stay relevant. And we were fortunate enough to quickly scale up and change our business model. And probably, even though it's tough time for generally people across the globe, but 2020 has been a good year for NLP Coaching Academy from a business perspective.
Okay, can you just tell us something about the topic self-coaching for success? Can you just add on?
Self-coaching for success. Well, not generally, you may have heard about, that you need to have a coach to be successful. My view is you need to be your own coach first to be successful, because you cannot get coached from a coach on a daily basis. Coaches generally are expensive. And if you have to speak with someone in a capacity of a coach or even a mentor, it may not be possible to do it on everyday basis. So when it comes to self-coaching, what is self-coaching? It's the same. The philosophies of coaching don't change. It is just that you tweak it a bit, the coaching framework, so that you can start to do your own reflections, whether these are cognitive reflections, whether these reflections help in terms of managing state of mind, which probably will fit under emotional intelligence. So I'll say self-coaching, especially in the times that we are in, when I say triggers, things can be very fluid and things are very dynamic these days in terms of how we are living. There's uncertainty in terms of travel. There's uncertainty people have in terms of jobs, workplace. So I'll say self-coaching is a key element to stay relevant and to manage state of mind.
So what are the tips you could give, some of the tips you could give for our audience to do self-coaching, other than, because many will feel like going for a coaching session, they might feel a bit down. So they want to be self-coached for themselves. So what is your thoughts about that?
Well, probably towards the end, I probably may share a couple of slides. I have a couple of easy coaching tools which people can, use to self-coach themselves.
Yeah, that would be great. So now coming on, how do you manage yourself and keep on going despite of the challenges? What drives you?
What drives me? Like I said, I think this sounds very close to the earlier question as well. What drives me is to stay relevant on a daily basis in terms of what's generally going on, and to be a better version of myself in terms of what I was capable of doing yesterday. Am I able to do it in a much better manner? That probably is a big factor in terms of how do I stay relevant and how do I ensure that I constantly learn. And that's one of the very key factors which has helped me over the years.
Okay, that's great. Could you please share with us what has worked well for you so far?
In terms of?
In terms of your career and what you do?
What has worked well for me is to ensure that there is equal amount of balance when it comes to managing risk of a business and not get carried away by things on social media in terms of, uh, people these days are exposed to 20,000 things on social media. Okay, this is a good career, that is a good career, this is a good career, that is a good product, this is a good service, which generally I have seen as part of uh, coaching issues or challenges. People do bring this element as well as part of coaching. So I'll say the focus on a single thing is something which is an absolute must, and focus on the most important element uh, which is required at the present moment, and also focus about a vision forward towards next 2 to 3 years is something that has worked very well for me, both in my information security career as well as in my NLP and coaching career as well.
Good. Sounds great. So, in your opinion, what is more necessary, idea or a good team for a successful startup?
Idea or a good team? Well, that goes hand in hand. When you talk about a good team or a good idea, you may have the best idea, but if you don't have the team to implement that idea and make that idea into a product or a service, then that idea is useless. And vice versa as well. If you have a bad product and a bad idea, but you have the best team available to implement it, so there's no point in implementing something which is not going to work out.
Good.
So I'll say an equal mix in terms of the idea and the team is absolutely important.
Okay, got it. So now we would love to know your advice for all those starting out as an aspiring entrepreneur.
Uh, Well, first I'll say, even though it sounds too good to be true at times that, entrepreneurship is going to provide a good life, it is going to provide XYZ. The question is, are you fit to be an entrepreneur? Just do a risk assessment in terms of can you deal with the uncertainties of life, which an entrepreneur has to deal with? Can you think doing something daily on a daily basis without thinking about holidays, without thinking about, okay, I just need to relax or I need to manage my work-life balance? Entrepreneurs generally are people you may have noticed in the journey of different entrepreneurs that they come with a very different kind of a mind frame, and which is at times they find it difficult to switch off. When I say difficult to switch off, because they are constantly thinking. They're constantly thinking about innovation. They're constantly thinking about getting better. So first, find out, if you're an aspiring entrepreneur, do you have the skill set and do you have the mindset to handle that? If yes, then go for it. And also plan well. When I say also plan well, make sure that you have finances available to manage your ideas. Make sure you have finances to take care of your other priorities which are there, family or anything else which is part of that you are dealing with. And patience. And if you are an entrepreneur and if you're just starting the entrepreneurship, patience is key. A friend of mine, he's also an entrepreneur. He says, Vikram, it takes 1,000 days for a business to become relevant. If you can sustain the first 1,000 days, that's probably somewhere around 3 years. And if you are able to manage those 3 years, there are 3 critical years of entrepreneurship. You will probably have 1,000 learnings in those 1,000 days in terms of what works, what doesn't work. And each business is different, each industry is different, each product is different, each service is different, and each entrepreneur is different as well. So there's no magic formula of success for an entrepreneurship. The magic will eventually evolve over a period of time. So stay relevant, just believe in your own ideas, believe in your own abilities of what you can do. And if it's entrepreneurship, then that's it. That's entrepreneurship for those who want to become one.
Wow, that's a great explanation. I just asked you this question because these days we see many people they jump into entrepreneurship and they want to become rich the next day. Like a kind of, they leave the current job and they leave everything and they just want to build on a business. So they get into entrepreneurship, and most of them, like they're likely to fail. And then that gets a lot of disappointment on all such things. That's why I asked you this question. So it was a
Absolutely.
great explanation.
You just framed it
Yeah.
well.
So I just want to ask what is the difference between self-coaching and coaching others? From your own experience, what enables you as a person to become a successful NLP coach and trainer?
Okay, these are two questions. Let me just answer them separately. So first one, so I just missed the first one while I was thinking about the second one.
Yes, I'll repeat. I just asked you, what is the difference between self-coaching and coaching others?
Okay, so difference between self-coaching and coaching others. Self-coaching is you are thinking about your own awareness. You raise your own awareness. You are aware of at any point of time how you manage your thoughts. At any point of time, you are able to manage your own emotions, self-control and self-management both. And you are able to think through what's going on generally in your life. There would be triggers, there would be situations which could have triggered you into reacting. But if you apply a self-coaching principle, which can be a simple thought, or it could be your own awareness of your own emotions and feelings, I'll put that into self-coaching. And when it comes to coaching others, these along with these two things, it would mostly be about looking at what the person is talking about. If I'm coaching someone, my focus would not be mostly on the content, what they're talking about. So a masterful coach doesn't coach the content of the client. They coach the client per se. So it's not about what, it's about the who, the person as such. And when I say person as such, so there are different things which you take care when you are coaching. You demonstrate listening skills, you demonstrate questioning skills, you demonstrate your coaching presence, you are dancing with your client in terms of what the client is presenting, and you are in your heightened self-awareness, so that you are not thinking about what the client is thinking. You're just looking at the client as a human being and taking care of them as a coach.
That's really great. Thanks for the clarification. From your own experience, what enables a person to become a successful NLP coach and a trainer?
I'm assuming successful, you mean successful in terms of money, success in terms of number of people attending the courses. I'll probably answer it from both perspective. When people talk generally about coaching, training, or any sort of business, you have to understand, if you're not into making money, or your thoughts are not around how to make money using your product or service, then you are missing out on the mindset of becoming successful. And when I say successful, a successful business means you are making money. You have a revenue, you have a bottom line in terms of, you have a top line, bottom line, and you're just looking at different ways of innovation. You're just looking at different ways of making money. And when you talk about successful NLP trainer and coaching. These are two different skill sets. A NLP training skill set, or in general any training skill set, requires a different sort of mindset, requires a different sort of personality. And when you're talking about training skills, it's about the rapport you are able to build with your audience. It's about not the content that you hold as a trainer. It's about how you can present that content to the participants so that they can actually experience that for their own learning. That's a skill set of an NLP trainer. And a coach would be slightly different. It's a different skill set. Coach doesn't have to impart knowledge to the client. Coach has to just facilitate the session in a way that the client is in charge of the entire session, and the client is actually driving the entire session for themselves. And the success for both the things remains the same: constant innovation, sales and marketing, probably the third thing, how to stay relevant.
Yes.
The dynamics will continuously change, and how much attention you are paying on those will determine if you are financially successful as a trainer and a coach.
Yes, because end of the day, it all like ends up in money, because like everyone does like something to be betterment in their life. So they're looking out for money, and that's what they name it as success too. I agree.
Well, this reminds me of an incident. This was many years ago when one of my mentors, she was mentoring me, and part of that she said, "Vikram, do you have a website?" I said, "Yes, I do have a website." And she just looked at my website and she said, "Vikram, looks like you are into not in business. You looks like you have a charitable trust going on." And I didn't understand. And she said, "Every third word in your website is free, 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 free. If you are running a business, then treat it like a business. You want to do social service, or you want to do a work which is around social responsibility, then make sure it has a frame, it has a compartment. Don't run your entire business as social service. Then it will become one." And that hit me hard. This was in 2014, 2015. And I think probably that was the time when I had to shift the mindset, treating my business as a business. Well, it was not a business till that point. It was just a hobby which I was pursuing.
Okay.
You can say that it was a hobby which I was pursuing, and it just took a shape of a business somewhere around 2014, end of 2014 and early 2015.
Okay, that's great. So like we just have we just want to know like what is NLP and why NLP?
What is NLP? Well, to formulate the name NLP, which is Neuro Linguistic Programming. It took Richard Bandler, John Grinder, Frank Ruselic. They are the co-founders of NLP. And then there were many other co-developers. It took almost 6 years to name them what is NLP. So it will take me much more than half an hour to actually explain what is NLP. Now, in short, what is NLP? NLP is about how you use your senses, which is the neuro part, and the linguistics is about how your verbal and non-verbal, how you use language to influence yourself and to influence others. That's the linguistic part. And then programming is how you use the different thinkings and different ways of strategies and processes, that how we run our mind, and how can you become aware of these strategies, and how can you streamline these strategies for yourself and for your clients to get what they want. Hence the name Neuro Linguistic Programming. I know it sounds simple, three alphabets, NLP, but there's a lot behind these three alphabets. And why NLP? Well, I can answer it from a perspective of mine. Why NLP? Well, stumbled across it many years ago. I learned it, and I became fascinated by what opportunities it opens up for someone who learns it. And even though I was in an IT career and I have no background of psychology, but I found that NLP was much more than psychology in terms of direct applications. And later on, after being an NLPN for almost a decade, one of my mentors, Michael Hall, he speaks about it very beautifully. NLP is about it's an expression of psychology, because not too many people know NLP came out of different psychologies. Even though there's a lot of jargon around NLP on social media, there's a lot of jargon around what it is, what it is not. But the real history of NLP is about how different people, when I say different people, people who were successful in their own ways, in their own fields. And part of the creation of NLP came from Gestalt, which is psychology, humanistic psychology, cybernetics, and anthropology. So all these sciences presented something useful, and while these fields were growing in their own way, Richard and John and Frank Fuselick, along with their students, they went on a different tangent in terms of taking out the best out of all these sciences, psychologies, to create neurolinguistic programming. And it's a wonderful way of saying that it's applied psychology, so that you don't have to spend too much time learning psychology, because psychology is an academic degree. You spend 4 years to learn it, whereas you don't need 4 years to learn neurolinguistic programming. If you want to apply it, you can do a decent course in 7 to 8 days to get started with it and apply it in your daily life for yourself. You can use it in your coaching, counseling, the nature of work that you do. It has applications in leadership development these days. NLP has applications in influencing people. You can use it in sales, and it is used in accelerated learning these days to enhance learning capabilities of children as well as adults. So that's in a nutshell, what is NLP and why NLP and what it can do for people.
Okay, that's really great. But why do you think some of the psychologists don't accept neuro-linguistic programming even though it's effective?
Well, I can't speak on behalf of what psychologists have to say about it. And I will bring in an NLP presupposition in here that each person is unique and map is not the territory. So whatever they have to think about NLP is, they can continue to think about it. And whereas from an NLP perspective, NLPians are busy doing their own work.
Okay. So now we just want to hear from you about the topic of the day. So can you just elaborate on that?
Well, let me share my screen so that people can probably look at a couple of tools and probably start using them for themselves. I'll say a simple one is, what are your frames of your thinking? Where is your attention on the issue or the solution? So when I'm talking about from a self-coaching perspective, there are different ways that people can think. So let's say if somebody's thinking about, I don't want to fail in the exam tomorrow. And if you are reading this line, what are the images and scenes you are creating in your head? You are creating probably a scene in your head of failing in an exam if you have one tomorrow, which means you are sort of prepping up for a failure. And similarly, a simple one which probably we can use in our daily life is, I don't want to miss my flight tomorrow if I have a flight. Now, what's the image that's coming into my head? It's probably, a flight is taking off and I'm just looking at that flight. This is a thinking frame, and this is an NLP thinking frame. Now, an alternate way to think would be, I want to clear my exam tomorrow. That's called your thinking in terms of the outcome you want to get. Similarly, I want to reach the airport on time tomorrow. Now, the most powerful way of self-coaching is to look at what are the frames you are operating with in the present moment. Where is your attention? Are you looking towards the problem, why the problem is there, or are you looking towards getting a solution? You can take a screenshot, those who are looking at this screen. And yes, happy thinking. Another one, which generally is a tool which is for self-coaching, is called an emotional audit tool. So this is a tool which helps in both raising your self-awareness and raising your self-management in situations which are tough, where generally you can get an amygdala hijack. Now, I don't want to get into too much technicalities of what is an amygdala hijack. And in simple way to explain what it is, that a situation which generally would have triggered you, for an example, that if you are at workplace and your boss is giving you work or is saying something and you end up screaming at your boss, probably is a good example of an amygdala hijack, that you as a person were not very self-aware and couldn't manage. So here is how you do self-coaching in contexts like these. Now, the first question that you generally ask yourself in a situation would be, what am I thinking? Now, there is a background, which is the neuroscience background of the emotional audit. You don't have to literally like read that or think what it is. The question in the blue is the important part of how do you want to manage this. First, you think, what am I thinking? Answer that question. What am I feeling? So the first question is, what am I thinking, is cognition. What am I feeling is a kinesthetic question. It goes into the emotion and feeling part. Then what do I want now? So you acknowledge what you are thinking, you acknowledge what you are feeling, and between these two questions, you would have sort of regulated your emotions and feelings towards what's going on generally. Then ask a question, what do I want now? Which is a thinking question in terms of driving your attention and focus towards what you want in any context. How am I getting in my own way? And you can answer this question as well. How am I getting in my own way? You will again reflect. And when I say reflect, you will go inwards and you will check, are my behaviors hampering me in some way or the other? Is my emotion in the right, when I say frame of mind generally means a bigger sense, is a bigger, when I say frame of mind, it will be emotions, feelings, thinking, and many other things going on. Am I in the right frame of mind? Am I getting in my own way? So all these things will come out when you are answering this question. And the last question is, what do I need to do differently now? So those who just want to use a simple self-coaching tool for themselves, 5 questions, put it on a piece of paper, keep it in your back pocket. Whenever you sense that you are about to go haywire in a context, pull out your card, answer these 5 questions. That's all. You will probably feel a sense of control. You will feel a sense of at ease, and you can start to think in terms of what needs to be done And when I say think, you probably will think in a way which is appropriate in that context. So we have 13 minutes. I'll just stop here, even though there was one more tool. So I'll just stop here and probably I'll just take a few questions.
Mr. Vikram, if you don't mind, can you just share that first screen?
Which screen?
The first one which you
The
shared.
first tool.
First tool.
Yeah, first tool.
This one? Sorry, this one.
No, the previous one, before the
Previous
emotional
one.
audit. Oh, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you. sir.
So if you don't mind, can you just share the other tool also with us?
All right, so the next one is on similar lines. It's called a reappraisal. It comes from cognitive restructuring, where you give a different meaning, constructive meaning to an experience. It's similar to emotional audit, but slightly different in terms of wordings. And again, it's a self-coaching process, self-coaching tool, so that it would be based on questions. So if you are experiencing something, let me give an example so that it becomes easy to understand as well. Let's say if I am worried about my corporate career and I'm worried that my manager doesn't give me too much time at workplace, and I can sort of self-coach myself around this as well. What can I learn from what I'm experiencing? So I'll answer this question. Then how can I turn this into a meaningful experience for me? Now, whatever my manager is going to do or not going to do, it's not in my control. So I just have to also check what's in my control, what's not in my control. How can I turn this into a meaningful experience? Probably an answer would be, since it's not in my control, let me just work and enjoy my work and gain relevant experience. If this doesn't happen or that has to happen, it will anyway happen. If someone else is experiencing the same situation, what will I tell them? So when you answer this question, you sort of dissociate from your own context. It allows you space to think in terms of what's going on. Your cognition will kick in. Your negative emotions will sort of subside, and you will be able to think in a way so that you can get into an appropriate behavior in that particular context. Is what I'm telling about this experience really true? So you're checking whether what narrative or story that I have built in my head, is that really true? Do I have facts to substantiate what I'm telling myself? So I'm self-coaching, so I'm answering these questions. I can do it as a self-tool in my head by just answering, or I can just write the answers on a piece of paper. And you will notice a huge difference in terms of, by doing these three things, you'll find a huge difference. What evidence do I have? And is that really supporting my conclusion about it? It's the follow-up of the fourth question. What can be two or more interpretations about the same? So the sixth question is where you think what can be an alternate interpretation of what is your original interpretation about the context. So sixth question is the most powerful question in the whole sequence. If you sort of become familiar with how to do it, and the magic always is about if you are doing it. The magic is never that it will happen automatically. The more often you do it, the more quickly you will move towards that magic of self-coaching, where you will be able to do it when required. And what's the best thing for me to do right now? So you always contextualize everything from your cognition perspective, from how you are emoting, how you are feeling, and then you come back to the present moment and you look at just what's the best thing to do in that particular context.
It's a real great teaching.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Vikram. Could you share that screen once again, the final screen?
Final screen. No
Yeah.
worries. One second. There you go.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah.
So I think this is a time for the questions for the audience. So we're having a lot of questions in the chat box.
Mhm.
So anyways, thank you so much, Vikram. Thank you for accepting the invitation. Thanks for your time. Thanks for the wonderful session. I'll just hand over to Raji to take over the questions from the audience. Thank you so much.
Anytime,
Over to
welcome.
Raji. Yeah, over to Raji.
It was a very nice session where you spoke about your own experiences as an entrepreneur. And yes, we would have liked to hear more tools actually, because I think all of us do a lot of self-talk, which sometimes can be more detrimental than helpful. So anyway, but it was good. I think you summarized the 3 slides about the tools, which are quite effective. And Abhirami has taken a screenshot, so that's a good thing. There were a few questions, in the chat box. Somebody asked a question, please guide steps to follow when an individual recognizes 1 is unproductive behavior, 2 is individual does not know how to identify gaps in effectiveness.
Mhm. Okay, the question doesn't look very clean. So let me just give my.
Yeah.
So first is unproductive behavior. I just heard that.
Yes. How do we identify unproductive behavior?
Well, there's nothing called unproductive behavior. Behavior is a behavior. Now, if I'm at workplace and I'm just relaxing and not doing anything, then that behavior of relaxing at workplace is not a relevant behavior. But the same behavior, if I'm demonstrating in Maldives sitting on a beach, then that becomes a very relevant behavior and an apt behavior for sitting on the beach. So behaviors can be relevant and not so relevant depending on the context where the behavior is being done.
Okay, that's. I think they also wanted to know how do we identify effectiveness. So that was part.
Effectiveness of the behavior, well, it can only be tested by the result. If the behavior is towards a result, check the result. That's your simple answer of checking the effectiveness. If I am working on something for 3-4 years and I'm not doing anything, nothing is coming out of it, then nothing is basically coming out of it.
Right. I think when you were talking about entrepreneurship, somebody asked this question, so it's probably related to entrepreneurship. Is it possible to do it alone? And when do we need a team?
It's possible to do it alone. When I say it's possible to do it alone, I did it alone for a long time. And you may have heard stories about you need a team to start a business. No, sorry, you don't need a team to start a business. You can manage your business without a team to the point where you are running in gear 5. When you can't handle something, you need someone else to handle it for yourself. But till the point you can handle it, you can do it. And whether you are wearing 20 hats as an entrepreneur, please do. Especially the innovation, especially the sales, especially the marketing at the beginning. You can't just have someone else run sales for you. Then it's not your business. It's somebody else's business who's doing sales for you.
Right.
So as much possible as you can, and I'm talking about an entrepreneurship on a tight budget. If the budget is tight, if you don't have too much money to spend, then become your own team for yourself. And if there are certain elements which you are not able to handle, get freelancers to work with you as an extension of your team. Don't hire people to do something which can be done either by yourself or by someone in cents. Don't pay top dollars to get something done unless you are a billion-dollar enterprise.
Right. Thank you for the answer. The third question is, what are the various fields where NLP can be applied?
Well, NLP, a person living on a daily basis is using NLP. Very simple. And whatever the person is doing, that's where the NLP is being used. If a parent is communicating with a child, they are using NLP. If the child is throwing tantrum and the parent is calm, that's an application of managing state using NLP. It's automatically inbuilt. It's just that we are not aware of the different tools that we naturally use. So anything that we do is NLP. NLP came out from behaviors of people, watching it, synthesizing it, giving it a name in terms of tools and techniques. So the applications and uses of NLP it starts from self. As a person, can you handle yourself? Can you handle your state of mind? Can you handle your emotions? Can you handle yourself in different contexts? So that's an application. After that, whether you are a salesperson, whether you are a business leader, whether you are a coach, counselor, you can use it wherever you want to use it.
Okay, thanks. There is a very interesting question. What is the difference between NLP and transaction analysis, TA?
Well, I can only talk about NLP. I have no idea what happens in TA, even though I have, but I would refrain from talking about it because that's not my expertise.
Okay.
I only know that TA takes 3 years to finish. NLP in 3 years, you can do a PhD in NLP.
I think TA also has these different states in an individual, parent, adult, and child, and all that. Which I don't know much about NLP, but I have read a little bit about TA. So that has 3 states, and you're always kind of moving yourself, whether you're in a parent state now, or you're in an adult state, or you're in a child state. So that's all I know about it. So yeah. Okay. So moving on to the next question. What are the basic qualities or requirements to learn NLP? And are there online courses available?
Well, anybody can learn NLP. And there are online courses. Well, technically, everybody these days is doing NLP online. After lockdown, even though before lockdown, I have never done an NLP course online because I still believe that, a course like NLP has to be experienced in a classroom-based format, physically. But considering the limitations, you have to adapt, and the adaptation is you can do an instructor-led course online as well.
Okay. Does your institute offer online courses as well, NLP Academy?
Yes, NLP Coaching Academy offers different courses, and the entry level is 15 days.
Okay.
And that generally happens in the evenings. So probably people don't even have to stop doing their day job.
Okay.
And that probably is something that we have seen is working well for us as well and for people as well.
That's great. That's great. Okay, so I think the next question is: would you like to know what would like to know what would be the right point in your career to get into entrepreneurship?
Well, generally, I have heard people saying when you have 6 months of saving, you jump into entrepreneurship. I will say when you have enough to live your entire life, then you jump into entrepreneurship. When people talk about that you need to have plan XYZ when you are running a business, I'll say reach to a point where you don't need plan XYZ. And when you are running an entrepreneurship with a safety of finances, you will enjoy the journey rather than being worried about, oh, this month I have to do this so that I can pay my EMI of my car or house or child education. Make sure you have enough. And my view about enough is you have enough to live your entire life.
So that you enjoy the journey and you're not.
You enjoy the journey.
Yeah.
My view is people generally jump into entrepreneurship way too early. If you never had a luxury of a job and probably you started off as an entrepreneur, then you can start off as an entrepreneur because then you never had that finances issue. You never had that issue of managing EMIs because you never had a salary to get into that trap. If you are 18 years old, starting an entrepreneurship, provided you are aware and sure that you're not going to look at the fellow student who gets a job in $1 billion enterprise and gets a great salary day one, but you as an entrepreneur, you don't have that luxury to begin with. But in a longer perspective, you might be better off because by 30 you will have 10 years of experience and you will have 10 years of entrepreneurship experience, whereas the other person would have 10 years of job experience and 0 years of entrepreneurship experience. So it depends on different stages when you want to get out. The more generally, some I have seen, they finish their entire tenure in an organization and then they jump into entrepreneurship. My view is by the time they start becoming one, their life is over.
Yeah.
Start early, start with caution, and plan it well.
Okay, thank you. There is another question. I think we have time for about 2 or 3 more questions, and I already have them on my list. So we won't be taking any more questions in the chat box. What has been your experience working with millennials and guiding them on self-coaching?
Well, if I have to look at millennials, to me, they are much more sorted than what we were in our age. I'm talking from my own experience. And I recall a funny incident. There was a mother and a child in one of the programs that I was facilitating in Dubai. And the mother is telling the 12-year-old, focus, you need to set the goal correctly. And he replied, I have finished my goal setting. Looks like yours is still pending. So it's called being aware of what's going on. It's being aware of the information which is available. Now, are millennials open to coaching? Well, I haven't done formal coaching of, if I have to say a millennial, but if I say someone who can be a close to a millennial was a swimmer that I was coaching. He was 18 years old. Well, he was very sorted in his own way. He told his parents that and he was a bright student. He was getting 95, 94% in his studies. And he told his parents, I would like to drop 1 year out of college. I will focus only on swimming for a year. If I make it into the Indian team, good enough in 1 year. Otherwise, I will go to UK and study. That's a bold decision. If I would have told that to my parents, they probably would have reacted in a different manner in the era where I was. Or probably I wouldn't have presented that idea. But it's a question of, the awareness. It's a question of information which is available these days.
And it's also a question of democratic parenthood.
Yes.
So, yeah, because I'm in the online education space and I get a lot of sports kids and musicians, who are pursuing mainstream sports and musicians, and they appear for school exams privately as private candidates. So it has a lot to do with democratic parenting as well, where parents are supporting such goals of children,
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
What are the ways we can create awareness with respect to coaching, or in short, who needs coaching?
Who needs coaching? Well, everybody needs a coach, including the coach as well. I have a coach who coaches me once every 15 days. And what are the benefits of coaching? Well, it's about sorting yourself. Probably you can say it's like refueling yourself, refueling your mind, your body in terms of where you're heading. And it's a way of talking about things which are important and talking about things which are running in your present awareness with respect to something that you want to achieve or something that you want to get rid of. It can be an issue or a goal. And how to spread awareness about coaching? Well, coaches are spreading awareness about coaching by doing advertisements on Facebook, Google, and coaching bodies are also doing that. So I wouldn't be too worried about that.
Okay, this is an interesting question. How much does the power of now concept relate to NLP?
Well, power of now from an NLP perspective, I will relate it more to emotional intelligence first. And emotional intelligence is, you can again say it's a subset of NLP. Power of now is your conscious awareness, how conscious you are about what's going on. And generally, the word you may generally hear on Facebook or somewhere here and there, a viral video which probably talks about the power of subconscious mind and the power of unconscious mind. Well, the power is always about the conscious mind. Your subconscious will not be powerful until unless you have planted something useful over there. So the power of now is about how you are aware of what's happening. Are you aware of taking pauses, using silence at times, of being aware?
How do we control a repetitive thought or obsessing over something?
Well, stop it. Take control of your mind.
Okay, can you please give us tips about how a sole proprietor can manage emotions effectively? Because as there are chances to feel lonely and isolated when you're in a startup.
Well, depends. Have bunch of people who are also in the same boat, one supporting the other, then the loneliness will disappear. Have people who are doing the same thing. That's why you will see lions moving together. You will find every animal living in a herd moving together, even though the strongest also doesn't stay alone. They have someone around. Same thing applies to entrepreneurs as well. Do you have people to talk to? And when I say people, they need not be only entrepreneurs. They can be coaches, they can be mentors, they can be teachers, they can be someone with whom you can speak.
Yeah, I can add a little bit to this. When I was starting up, I used to go to a co-working space because that kind of gets you out of the house and you may make some friends there as well. And it gives you a place to actually sit down and focus your thoughts. So that's another way of dealing with it. I think the final question for the evening is it necessary to choose micro niche when we can handle the whole process? For example, niche is marketing, micro niche is digital marketing. I don't know what this actually is. It
Well,
necessary to choose micro niche? Yeah.
in today's era, marketing and digital marketing has merged together. So if you're talking about marketing, it's digital marketing these days. You don't loaf around with pamphlets and distribute them in neighborhood. World has changed, and if somebody is thinking to run a business using that, that won't work in this era. And so that's just an example from what I heard, but it is absolute must to have a micro niche. And you need to focus on your niche very specifically. Why? Because you need to cater to something and to cater to someone. You can't cater to everything and everyone. If your attention and focus is on 20 things as an entrepreneur based on your service and product, then you can't be the market leader if you intend to be a market leader. That's something that I've generally seen. People who are entrepreneurs, they will have 20 servicing 20 services, 20 offerings, 40 products. By the time the person lands up on the site, they don't know, what they're getting into.
Yeah.
And I recall the ex-CEO of Cisco, and he used to say Cisco is only working in that area where they are either number one or number two. If Cisco used to go on number three on any product, they used to sell that product or discard that product. And I somehow so resonate with that because I was a great fan of Cisco and their products. And focus on one or two things and focus to become the number one or number two.
That makes sense. So thank you, Vikram, for patiently answering all the questions that came in. And thank you for the wonderful session of Q&A. So I'm going to hand over the floor to Abhirami Vivek for expression of gratitude.
Thank you. Pleasure is all mine.
Thank you so much, Raj. On behalf of Wicci Tamil Nadu Entrepreneurship Council, let me call it a fraternity of supporting and uplifting each other. We are here together and extend a very hearty vote of thanks to the speaker for having given us your valuable time amidst your busy schedules and sharing with us your findings and opinions today in a very interactive way. A very big thank you to Mr. Vikram Dhar for his efforts towards self-coaching for success. And I really admire the central idea of sharing the 3 most important tools for being a self-coach for being a successful person. Well, Mr. Vikram Dhar and attendees, an event like this cannot happen overnight. The wheels start rolling weeks ago. It requires a lot of planning and a lot of details to be done. We have been fortunate enough to be backed up by a team of very motivated and dedicated colleagues of Wicci Entrepreneurship Council who are very committed. I would like to thank Nalini Srinivas for taking a lot of effort to bring such a wonderful speaker and moderate the session in a very interactive way. And I take this opportunity to request the attendees to follow our FB page and post your feedbacks and follow us for our future events. Mr. Dhar is very generous enough to offer responses to those who could not ask questions. He has shared his email ID, which I will share it in the chat box. If you have any personal questions, you can mail him directly. And thank you, Mr. Dhar, for this kind of service that you are ready to offer to the attendees. I once again thank you, Mr. Dhar, and the council members and the attendees for making this session a lively one. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank you, Vikram.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The email ID has been shared.